Bon dia a
Good
tothom.
morning, everyone, authorities, members of the organization, attendees, friends. It's a pleasure for us to open the conference here in this auditorium. And I would like to thank the vice-rector of Heritage, Professor Alcoberro, for welcoming us here at the main hall of the University of Barcelona to solemnly open the fourth conference CoupDeFouet. As you can see, we are at the historical building of the university that was built 150 years ago by Elies Rogent. And the first architecture school of Barcelona was located here, and Domènech Montaner and Elies Rogent would be professors at that school, and later on they became directors of the school. So we thought it was a good idea to invite Jordi Rogent here to my left and Lluís Domènech so they can talk about the heritage of their ancestors. They coincide in space and time, and I'm gonna summarize the trajectory of Jordi Rogent and Lluís Domènech Girbau to initiate later on this dialogue between the two that it's gonna be very fruitful. I'm convinced of that. So first of all, Jordi Rogent and Albiol is an architect. He has a degree in town planning. Throughout his trajectory, he has worked and has had responsibilities with topics regarding to heritage. Between 2002 and 2013, he was the head of the Heritage Department at the Barcelona City Council, and he's been the author of numerous works related to heritage. He's been done intervention works, historical studies, catalogs, and many other special plans of protection. And he has also been a lecturer and written many articles. He's an active member of ADIPA, the Association of Architects to defend and intervene in architectural heritage. And in 1995, he was appointed a member of the Royal Academy of Fine Arts of San Jordi. Thank you very much for being here today. We have also with us, and I have the pleasure to introduce to you Lluís Domènech Girbau, PhD in architecture by the Superior School of Architecture of Barcelona, where he was a lecturer for 3 years. Since 1971, he has been working as an architect with José Amado, and among many other things and works. He was the author of the museum plan of Barcelona museums in 1993, done by the City Council of Barcelona. He has been part of the board of the MANAC, and he's vice president of the Orfeó Català, Palau de la Música, and president of the Foundation Domènech de Montaner. He has specialized in the work of his great grandfather. He directed the exhibition Lluís Domènech Montaner, The Conductor, and he has published several books on the topic. The last one is Domènech Montaner, A Universal Man. Among other things, I would like to mention, because we could be talk for hours about the trajectories of our two guests, I would like to say that he's been the curator of the last exhibition, which just opened up, the heritage of Lluís Domènech Montaner at the official associations of architects in Barcelona. Thank you, Luis, for being here. We will start saying that Elies Rogent and Lluís Domènech were two were two of the most relevant personalities in the architectural sphere in the second half of the 19th century. They belonged to different generations because there were 28 years of difference between the two of them. They respected each other and they became protagonists of the Renaissance movement. And the first question I would ask you would be, and maybe Rogent would answer first and Domènech after Rogent. For Rogent and Domènech, what was the role of the medieval Catalan past for Rogent and Domènech? Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me and having invited to share with my friend Luis such interesting topic. And I try to answer the question you just asked about the reaction of Rogent when uh, Antoni Gaudí got his degree. In my family, I've always heard that when the great grandfather, Elies Rogent, explained that when he had to put the mark for Antoni Gaudí, there was a discussion whether Gaudí, that had presented a main whole as a final work of his studies, while this part with this main hall was being built, well, there was a discussion whether Gaudí got the mark or not to pass. And it is said that my great grandfather said, I don't know if we are giving a good mark to someone who is a madman or a genius. And I found a notepad where my great grandfather wrote, today we gave a degree to Cascante and Gaudí, and between brackets, a genius or a madman. So this might be true, this story. And the family of my wife, which are the descendants of Guardiola, a great lecturer of that time, the family always said that Torres kind of said that helped that Gaudí passed and got the degree because he had been a lecturer of Gaudí, and he said, "Yeah, I propose that we give the degree to Gaudí because." If he's a saint, he will get. If he's a genius, he will get a monument, and if he's a madman, they will send him to a mental institution. I think there is something true in that story. And now, without further ado, I'm going to ask the question that our moderator asked. Elias Rogent, during his youth, had been a great hiker. He had gone throughout the province of Barcelona. He had gone to Poblet, and he had seen this medieval architecture. And I think that was a key element when he trained and worked as an architect. He goes on a trip fields with his students. He draws the plants with by drawing, and Domènech then takes pictures later on. But I think, yeah, was an important element in his training and when he worked. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. And thanks to the university and the organizers of the conference. Lluís Domènech studied at the beginning in Madrid. The architecture school in Madrid was a very academicist school. It was even located at the Fine Arts School of San Fernando. However, when Lluís Domènech went there, the school started introducing new criteria, new elements, for instance, new ways of looking at the history. And at that time, medieval topic was important, and other topics such as the structure topics. And Domènech published an article in 1878 in La Veu de Catalunya. So he published that article, and Domènech proposed that the different historical styles become a sort of pool where all the architects can go. So history has a moment of high quality in all styles. But at the same time, Domènech says what one cannot do is that to build modern buildings, we copy straight from historical styles or buildings. What we have to do is rethink or think what these historical models, what are the good points and the bad points, and evolve and elaborate a new architecture. So Domènech is trying to find what he will later on do as an architect, and something that it's happening already in Europe. Um, this is I'm referring here to Art Nouveau. So, on the one hand, the lesson from the past, and on the other hand, the kind of learning, um, how architecture was was explained. Elies Rogent can be considered the first Romantic Catalan architect, and the development of this modernity would link to modernism and Lluís Domènech in Montaner. They studied at the architectural school in Madrid. Rogent finished in 1851 and Domènech in 1873. What happened at that moment with the teaching of architecture in Barcelona? And when was the Barcelona Architectural School created? A school where they later on taught, and they were the directors of the school too. There is a topic that has not been widely studied. I think now that there are people that are starting now, and is the school of the master mason. In La Llotja school, from the beginning of the 19th century, there was a particular school of design. People who wanted to become an architect follow the course, and they were given a diploma at the end that had to be revalidated first at the Royal Academy of Arts of San Fernando, and in the second half of the 19th century at the Escuela Especial de Madrid. At the beginning of the 1850s, when there was a change in the teaching of architecture, the schools of master builders were created in Barcelona, Valencia, Valladolid. And I think that here we can see the turning point for architecture. Elies Rogent had finished his degree in 1951. In 1953, he became a professor at this Master Builder School of Barcelona, and he won a chair of topography and composition. And these are two subjects that seem very different, but one is essential to be able to work on the ground to when one wants to build topography. And Elies Rogent had a deep knowledge of topography, and the master builders that he trained were knowledgeable, and that explain how Barcelona was urbanized. And here I would like to mention again Torres Guardiola, who taught at that school also. He was teaching more technical topics, and is the first time when it was explained to students, and up to that moment they had been taught in a very classical way. And this time, students were taught that there were new materials, that there was a new way of building the iron structure, for instance. And this knowledge of technical techniques, understanding that these new materials allowed for a new way of building, was very important. And if we talk about composition and style, Rogent foster different topics and look at medieval art. Lluís Domènech and Montaner would be his teachings at the Architecture School of Barcelona. When Domènech and Montaner arrived at the school in 1875, there has been a merge between master builders and the new degree of architecture. So the idea is to create a new architecture. And there is something important. Domènech is very young, and is a young teacher, and he invents a new topic called, and I'm going to say it in Spanish because it was in Spanish, implementation of physical sciences to architecture. This topic was a topic or a subject matter in which the teacher explained about acoustics, water pipes, ventilation, extraction, the orientation of buildings, what architecture has to take into account in order to reach certain levels of comfort. So that means that before having this subject matter in architecture schools, this topic was not taught. So the studies were very academic. And Domènech didn't have to go into this controversy between architects and master builders because the studies had already merged. He had two things had happened to him that made him that impacted him as an architect. Domènech Montaner's father was a peasant. He lived in a village near Barcelona. I don't remember where exactly. And this Domènech's father, after the first industrial revolution in Barcelona, came to the city. It was an urban immigrant because he saw he could earn a better life in Barcelona. And he came to Barcelona and he started working at a printing at a print company. And after a few years, he started his own business, and he ended up being a publisher and became one of the main artisans in Barcelona when it comes to binding books. And that means that the father passed on to Lluís Domènech an ethical obligation of doing things well, of working hard, of being faithful to himself, and of being grounded and realistic. And I think that the Domènech's father had a big influence on him. And he also went to a secondary school, Lluís Domènech, the Galabotti School, which was directed by Mr. Galabotti, who has the good idea, and I think it happened also in other schools. They had regular teachers, and beside these regular teachers, Domènech and Montaner had also as teachers university professors that probably they didn't make enough money working at the university, so these professors went on to teach in private schools. And Domènech i Montaner had an extraordinary teacher, Llorenç i Barba, a philosopher who had a big influence in his time because he had a global vision of problems and he introduced concepts that it's hard to believe that were not more common at the time. And I'm referring to logic and common sense. And I think that this had also an impact on the future behavior of Domènech and Montaner. So, how architecture was taught and everything you've been mentioning, I think has to do with other topics that we won't have time to go into detail. I'm referring to traveling and other topics. Let's talk about their work and the urban landscape, and let's talk about the international exhibition. When Rogent was the director of the recently created Barcelona Architecture School, he was appointed director of the Universal Exhibition of Barcelona. Could you tell me what was the situation of the architecture before and after the Universal Exhibition? And also, what were the contributions of Rogent and Domènech Montaner? And we would end up talking about Renaissance and modernism and the transition. As many people know, Barcelona had committed to organize a universal exhibition. There was an initial project submitted by someone who was not from Barcelona, who was from Galicia, a military, Fernando de Casanova. And this proposal, the Barcelona City Council really liked the project. They saw that this had taken place in London, in Melbourne, in other cities. Barcelona City Council thought it was a good opportunity to open up Barcelona to the world. So, but the project, this initial project was doomed to failure because it didn't um, progress at a good pace. And not long before the opening of the Universal Exhibition, well, the City Council decided to change the direction of the project. And they decided that Rogent was going to be appointed director of the Universal Exhibition because since the 50s, since the 87, Rogent had been organizing exhibitions and different events, and he had been in charge of the technical part. Elies Rogent was not very sure at the beginning because he wasn't feeling very well. He was already a little bit sick, but he said that in the end he had to accept it as a patriotic commitment. And he accepted the commissioning done by the city council. Rogent, the city council thinks about Rogent, but sees also that behind Rogent there is a whole architecture school that has been training for years and years now professional architects. and architects that have new ideas. The Universal exhibition had to be done at the Ciutadella Park because it was the only empty plot in the Barcelona. And remember that at that time, Barcelona proper, it was Barcelona proper, and the what are neighborhoods now were not part of Barcelona at that time. And the park had a relationship with the city, and Elies Rogent managed that the architects, the lecturers of the architectural school, von Lluís Domènech, could build a new kind of buildings that, regardless of the style, so buildings that did not exist in Barcelona. And I think that was the big contribution to the new model of city. On the one hand, he um, he keeps the Cerdà plan, but he creates in another part of the city the Ciutadella Park, and with these new kind of buildings that had to provide a service, and they will be devoted to other purposes after the exhibition. Lluís Domènech was enthusiastic when the director of the school, Rogent, told him that he would be part of a group to work for the Universal Exhibition. And he received only one commission, the restaurant and cafeteria within the compound of the exhibition. The hotel was a private commissioning of the hotel promoter. But that was a private commissioning. And the renovation of the city hall and the Saló de Cent hall was a commissioning that had been done to Antoni Gaudí, but for Gaudí was thinking whether to accept it or not, and in the end, the Barcelona mayor thought that was not gonna end well and pass on the commissioning or the order to Domènech i Montaner. In a, a leaflet about this Consell de Cent renovation was published, and it was said that it's not true that Domènech i Montaner fought with Gaudí or the other way round. It was a natural transition. Of these three commissionings or orders, the cafeteria and restaurant in the compound of the exhibition, now it has to be renovated. But I think that is the most important building done by Domènech i Montaner. And I know this can be controversial because if we think about Palau de la Música, Hospital de Sant Pau, it's difficult to make this statement. But in this building, in the exhibition compound, Domènech i Montaner thought it was where he had to create a new architecture, where he had to show that a new architecture was possible. And it is a very sober architecture, very conceptual, with all that solve a functional aspect, a banquet hall, a constructive problem, because he uses the Catalan masons that build a wall in one day, and Domènech i Montaner makes sure that the walls don't fall, and an ornament aspect that he chooses in the last moment when he already has the walls of the restaurant with his friends Alexandra de Riquet and Apelles Mestres, they decide to put some coats of arms that you probably have seen. We don't have much time. All this topic of this laboratory that was the beginning of modernism here. And we can end up with ornamentation, ornaments. That was a topic taught at the architecture school. Do you think there are significant differences between Domènech and Rogent? We can start with Domènech. Domènech really loved the history of architecture, and he had the books of the times, Owen Jones, on ornamentation. But he had a very clear idea. This is that architecture was a whole art that had to solve at the same moment all the aspects. And one of the aspects was ornament. So Domènech didn't want to make a structure or build a structure and then call someone else to deal with the ornaments. He thought about ornaments when he was thinking about the building. For him, it was part of the architecture. And here in this main hall where we are, the ornaments, ornamentation, it's something that it's put on top of the architecture or on top of what's been built. The renovation of the administration pavilion in São Paulo Hospital, the vaults that are found in different spaces that have a metallic structure. At the same moment where this structure was made, ornaments were already included. The mosaics, the ceramics were already put, and they were part of the structure of the vault. Yeah, you're completely right. And I think that it was good to start with Domènech and Montaner. It is true that one of the last decoration works of Elies Rogent is this room where we are. While this building was being built, and for me, they had to agree on what had to be medallions, paintings, and it took a long time until the 1880s. And I think that Rogent makes a last reflection, and probably here he was influenced by his teachers, but other teachers in the school, Domènech and Vilaseca, and Elias thought that decoration had to be part of the building right from the beginning. And in the at the exhibition, Rogent approved two buildings that will be the beginning of what will come later on: the cafeteria and restaurant, and the Arch of Triumph, designed by Vilaseca. When a technical director had to accept and approve, then an Arch of Triumph will be made with bricks. Well, I think that was the most important decision that changed the history of architecture in Catalonia. And I would like to, and now is when the dialogue starts, now that we don't have more time. Elias Rogent did something extraordinary. He introduced in the teaching of architecture, the treaty by Militi, an Italian architect. Jordi and Peter Areu introduce that in the monographies about Rogent. This Italian architect had made an important decision, which is to uh, think about the character of the building, that a building is not something abstract, that a building had to have a use and had to reflect the habits of a country, had to take into account the location. And that was part of this change of ideas introduced by Rogent. And architecture lost this historicism and abstract character and went into the field of ornament that became something structural. I haven't said it before, but Rogent, at the beginning, I mentioned this. He was teaching topography and composition, and later on, he taught at the School of Architecture. He taught buildings from the point of view of their social purpose or social use. So, not just how they are built, but what they have to represent and how they have to explain that this building is in Barcelona, another one is in Madrid, another one in Paris, not copying or assimilating directly a building that Rogent saw in the 50s in Munich. And he doesn't copy the facade, but he does something similar, the facade of the university. And buildings built 30 years later are completely different. I think that's a good ending point because we have to talk now about national identities. So we can leave it here. We've talked about two trajectories that have been explained in an extraordinary manner, two architects that are sons, great sons, great grandsons of these two main Catalan architects of the second half of the 19th century. Thank you, Lluís Domènech Girbau, for being here, and thank you, Jordi Rogent and Lluís, for having taken part in this dialogue. We would carry on. However, we have now to listen to the opening conference by Anne-Marie Thies.